So we have 3 items today. We have a briefing on reverse auction purchasing, also our CIP work session on FiberNet, as well as Ultra Montgomery. We will begin with our first item, and I welcome Mr. Shetty here, Ms. Jones as well, for this first item on our agenda. And this is a follow-up on an OLO report 2818-4 reverse auction purchasing. So let's just get right into it and turn it over to Mr. Tromka and Latham to tell us all about this, and then we'll hear from Mr. Shetty in terms of how that is going on. I think I vaguely recall that former Councilmember Elrich was very interested in this topic, right?
That is absolutely correct.
So here we are. Let's see how it's.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we're not going to walk you through the report as we did previously. We're going to give you a 2-minute overview just as a reminder to set the stage and then turn it over to our friends in procurement. So as the chair said, this is a follow-up on OLO report 2018-4 reverse auction purchasing, which the council did approve but was put on the work program at the suggestion of then council member Elrich. Okay, so a reminder. What is a reverse auction? Very, very briefly. It's a purchasing method that is expanding its use in the public sector because of its potential to lower costs compared to traditional sealed bid processes. In a reverse auction, registered vendors, they submit their bids online. And as the reverse auction progresses, bidders can view the other bids that are coming in real time. And what makes a reverse auction have the potential to lower costs is that as the bidding process continues, vendors may lower their bid prices once they see what their competitors are offering. And it keeps going in that process until when the bidding closes, the vendor with the low price gets awarded the contract, assuming they're a responsible and responsive bidder. And then the process goes back to what a traditional solicitation would look like. Very brief. If you've got questions, we can go into more details. But the history, the county government has limited experience with reverse auction purchasing, primarily for fuel purchases going back over a decade. 3 key findings from our report. When we did this report, we surveyed many state and local government procurement officials who've used reverse auctions, and they all reported that reverse auctions can produce significant cost savings. Second, because this is a caveat on number 1, is that there are really only certain types of goods and services that are well suited for reverse auctions. They're really most appropriate for goods and services with very precise specifications that are sold by multiple vendors. The things that you would use in an IFB, an invitation for bid for, as opposed to an RFP, a request for proposal, where price can be the determining factor. If that's the characteristic, then it works well. Also, reverse auctions we found were not appropriate for small dollar purchases because there isn't some overhead administrative cost to them. So again, with that as the background, we presented this report to this committee, or the previous committee, a little over a year ago. And that time, the GO chair and then council president sent a letter to the new county executive. It's in your packet on circles 1 and 2. And really what the Ms. Navarro had asked for was that the executive undertake 3 efforts. 1, to educate contract and budget managers about what reverse auctions are and their availability. 2, to identify goods and services that could be suitable for reverse auction bidding. And 3, to pilot the use of reverse auctions for at least 2 non-fuel procurements. So the purpose of this meeting, as the chair said, is to hear from procurement as to the progress they made. I think I'll just conclude by rehashing a conversation we had a year ago. Like today, like a year ago, the county government can always look for cost savings and cost reductions, and we're always looking for ways to do that. Most of the time when we're looking at reducing costs, it means reducing services or taking things away. There are a few rare opportunities to reduce costs without having to reduce service, and this process offers that potential. Will it revolutionize procurement? No, because of what we said, it's only applicable for certain types of goods and services. But within some departments, for example, when OLO did the report, we identified things like apparel that we use in recreation sports leagues, salt for road surfaces, the paper bags that alcohol projects in our liquor store are sold in. Those are the types of things. And in departments like that, you could conceivably get some cost savings that then free up budget dollars for other things. So that was the motivation. That's the background. With that, yeah, I thank Mr. Shetty, Ms. Jones for being here, and we'll turn it over to them.
All right. Okay, Ms. Jones.
Okay. So as a result of the reverse auction session, we work with DGS, and so for the first time, we issued a solicitation that was not just for a reverse auction consultant for fuel, but for fuel and other commodities. When we entered into that contract, October of 2018, the winning offeror only provided pricing percentages for fuel. And so we worked with DGS to amend that contract to provide percentage pricing for non-fuel energy commodities to allow us to use that contract to do non-fuel reverse auctions. In terms of the educational efforts, in March of 2019, when we held the live reverse auction for fuel, procurement invited multiple county departments to our office for a presentation and training on reverse auctions and the types of commodities that could be utilized. We also worked with DGS to get recommendations on possible categories from the reverse auction consultant. A lot of the items on that were things that we were either doing, such as fuel, or for office supplies, which we do as an RFP, and we purchase a wide variety that's ever changing. So, and then they also had things that we do as an RFP for our IT commodities, both of those under our local small business program. So then we had our procurement specialist work with departments for contracts that were coming up to see what some potentials were. In the packet, we included what those pilot efforts were. So we considered several candidates. SALT, we agree, would be a great candidate, but the timing at the time that the SALT cooperative needed to be issued, because we're the lead for COG, did not work out, so we had to proceed, because you don't want to do SALT pricing in the fall or winter months. You want to do it in the summer. But when that does come back around, that would definitely be a candidate that we would explore. Sodium hypochlorite for swimming pools. While the estimated contract value would be reasonable, the number of interested firms was very low, so that was not a good factor, as Aaron had mentioned, in terms of a reverse auction. For exercise equipment for police and fire, we looked at that. There are several firms that could provide that, but that industry has those firms in targeted distributor relationships, so that you can't have multiple firms because they have kind of dealer territories. And then printing supplies, initially this was tagged as a reverse auction, but with further discussion from DGS, the pool was very, very small, and at the $100,000 estimate, we didn't think it would be a viable candidate. So what are some of the things that we do intend and have been working on for a reverse auction? So we're actively working with DOT, who's taking the lead for a multi-agency uniform contract. They're already on board with the reverse auction, but there are multiple divisions within within DOT, Transit, and Highway Services, and we're also talking to DGS for Fleet to come on board. So it's going to take a while for us to get those specifications kind of tight enough for a reverse auction, but we're hoping that within a year that one will be off the ground and hopefully executed. But there is a meeting with the reverse auction consultant, DOT, and procurement in March to kind of solidify the changes that are required for that contract to meet the reverse auction. Custodial services for indoor pools. Initially, we looked at that, and we were going to do that as a reverse auction. At that time, another manager had looked into it and had decided that it probably shouldn't because of the living wage rate. Historically, the pay scales were very low. They were concerned whether doing a reverse auction would end up having the pricing kind of be well below. But I think I might want to revisit that with OCA and the reverse auction consultant to see whether we can set a minimum bidding level that would address that concern. And then we are discussing with DGS for the future paper purchase, because that would be an excellent candidate for reverse auction. So we have a couple that are in the works to be issued for reverse auction. Aaron mentioned liquor store paper bags. At the time that contract had to get resolicited, it wasn't enough time to revamp that bid to meet reverse auction. So we had to go the traditional route, but when that gets resolicited in 2021, we would consider that for reverse auction, and same with Department of Recreation. We've spoken to them and they are definitely on board and excited to work with us for apparel for a reverse auction. Did you want to mention the last piece?
Sure. So the one last thing to add here is a lot of what Pam discussed requires us to work with the departments to forecast what they have coming, because if you don't have enough time to set this up correctly, you completely mess it up. In fact, what could be a good thing can very quickly turn into a very bad thing if, for instance, you don't have your specs exactly locked down and now you've got a vendor selling you something that's different than what you wanted. And again, when you've got multiple departments or multiple divisions within a department, you run that risk. The other risk, and this struck me with SALT by happenstance, we didn't go that route, but Chris Conklin was talking about how he's planning to reduce the use of salt on our roads for environmental reasons. But the truth is, had we gone the reverse auction route, the bids are made that, especially in that type of competition, given economies of scale, and if we suddenly decided that our volume needs had changed, that could have actually backfired on us. So there's a lot of things that you want to take care of, and frankly, what you need is lead time. And that is something that we've historically, frankly, struggled with. However, as part of some of the bigger structural changes that I wanted to make, and you're going to see this when we come to you with the budget, I'm actually going to be creating a position that reports to procurement, but that is embedded in the using department. So going forward, I'm going to have procurement people working in the business, for lack of a better word, because I want them to understand not just the technical aspects of contracting, but the specific aspects of the needs that the department has, and then the timing around those needs. So that, to Pam's point, you're not trying to buy salt when it's at its peak price. You're buying it in the summer when nobody else is or few people are thinking about it. So essentially, I think that even though we've listed a few options here that are viable, and again, uniforms and things are probably a good candidate, I think that going forward, we'll have a lot better visibility into what the using departments are planning to do. And we'll be influencing them early on, so that we're not trying to, at the last minute, squeeze things in. And then, like in the case of those paper bags, which also, frankly, were a very good candidate because that's a proper commodity, we'll be able to get in on time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that some of the changes we're making will probably allow us to increase use of reverse auctions. All that said, I do tend to be, as much as the county executive and on the council was a huge advocate of this and still is, I do tend to be very careful with the reverse auctions, just because while they can lead to huge savings, they also do turn everything into a commodity. At that point, you're basically looking at the lowest common denominator in what you're trying to buy. There are other options that are still on the table that sometimes the opportunity cost of going the reverse auction route means you're not going to take a different, like a cooperative, for instance, where multiple jurisdictions can come in on something and get an even better price, again, economies of scale. And those are the types of things that I just want to make sure that we don't forego just because we are trying to hit a number here just to say we've done this. But again, I think that given the more strategic perspective procurement is going to have going forward with these three embedded people, as well as with sort of the benefit of time to be able to anticipate those things and tee them up, I think you will see a lot more reverse auctions no matter what.
Well, and of course, I do want to, again, emphasize that this was former county council member Mark Eldridge who wanted to look into this. So this is why we felt that it would be very important after the OLO published the report to have a follow-up and see what were some of these, opportunities. I think that what you mentioned is there are caveats to it. I totally understand. I hope, of course, that you've shared that with him. But the idea of a pilot was to just, take a look and see what could be some opportunities, but also that lead time obviously is super important as an option, because we're constantly looking at ways to, as you know, re-engineer and find cost savings. So really appreciate the work that has gone into it thus far. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Thank you to the chair for your leadership on this, and to the county executive for his interest in this and pushing this OLO for a great report. Thanks to you all for working on it. It's obviously complicated, and I agree that the biggest part of this is making sure that you're prepared for it, that the specs are right, and that it's actually a commodity, which I think sometimes they seem like a commodity on their face, but once you identify all of the different challenges, they might not be. And so I think that is really critical. I appreciate your diligence in that. You mentioned earlier COG and the SALT, that were the point on COG. Are we already cooperating through a traditional model to bring down the cost of salt with other governments in the region?
So Montgomery County takes the lead for both fuel and salt with the Council of Government members. Sorry. So yeah, so the county takes the lead on the cooperative procurement for both salt and fuel on behalf of COG.
So,
And it's important to note, the fuel has many times been through reverse auction, so
Yes.
you can do both. You can do the cooperative and the reverse auction simultaneously.
yeah, and that was going to be my question. So on the other items that we're talking about, identifying opportunities for reverse auctions, are we also looking, anything that I think is eligible for reverse auction is eligible for cooperation, because our specs should be similar to other specs. There might be slight differences, but there shouldn't be on the back end qualitative, subjective decisions of whether things have been met or not. It should be pretty clear in black and white. Of course, that the devil's always in the details, but at least in theory. So are there on the there are some mentions in here about the sodium hypochlorite for the pools and other things. I mean, every other jurisdiction has pools. We also have other agencies like Montgomery College, Universities of Shady Grove, the school system, park and planning, other agencies. Are we looking at the cooperation of other
Yep.
regional and county governments on all of these items that we're looking into?
We do. So for the uniforms, the ready-made agency uniforms, we're working with multiple agencies within the county for that one to try to get that off the ground as the first time reverse auction. For things like the salt and for paper purchases, we've worked with Montgomery County Public Schools in the past where they've taken the lead. But if we do a reverse auction for this one, we would likely take the lead. So that one can be a cooperative. Liquor store paper bags, I'm not sure. The staff apparel could be, but we do communicate with our procurement counterparts for Montgomery County agencies in terms of procurements that we do together or that we can jointly do.
Part of the background, you need a service provider to run these. We don't have the infrastructure just to turn it on and bid. So the county has an RFP that was turned into a contract with the service provider. As far as I know, I don't think MCPS or the other county agencies have that.
No.
So things that we do cooperatively with other county agencies, it would seem likely that the county government would take the lead.
Yes.
Great. Well, and I hope that we can continue to look at
Yes.
opportunities for that as we're looking at opportunities for reverse auction, that we're also looking for additional opportunities beyond the ones that we're currently doing. I mean, obviously, that's a good start because there's already likelihood that that's a commodity that we're already cooperating on, but that we continue to look at that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Council President.
Thank you very much. I think you hit every nail on the head. I really do. But the only question that I have is, and of course I like the idea of the pooling of contracts, and I don't know whether they would do a reverse auction for that from COG, but if they would. But how about for the local preference idea? How would that fit into this?
So I don't think that you could do the local preference for
A reverse auction?
simply because that would almost defeat the purpose of
Right.
reverse auction, right? Because if I could see the lowest price and I know that I'm local, I'm just basically taking a guess that if that vendor is not local, I can be 10% above them and still win it because I have the local preference point on my side. So for that reason, because of the fact that it could be gamed, it's deliberately left out of it. But again, it brings into issue what specific commodities you would use for reverse auctions, right? And Pam briefly touched on this, but an example would be our office supplies right now are a huge local small business reserve contract, and it's good because again, for all the reasons why we want to support local businesses. But where you run into a problem is where if somebody suggests that actually that would be a great candidate for a reverse auction, because at the end of the day, a ballpoint pen is a ballpoint pen. You have to make those decisions, those sort of bigger decisions about whether or not we're actually looking to to save money through the reverse auction or support the local economy through the local small business. And those are the trade-offs that we're constantly looking at.
So what we saw when we did the research on the report is it is possible to marry the two if there are multiple local vendors who offer it. So you can do it, but as Mr. Shetty said, if there's only one or two local vendors, it's not going to work. You have to have both the local requirement and enough competition locally in order for it to work. So it doesn't make it impossible, it just narrows its possibility.
And I would think if there's a possibility that if it's a tie, it goes to the local. You know, I mean, so they would get a preference in that way, or something like that, or they would have first refusal on the best, however you talk about it. But because it would be helpful, and as we know, for some small businesses, you know, selling several tons of paper is a huge day for them. So yeah, I think this is very good. We should try it.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. We look forward to future updates and appreciate the work that's been done thus far. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tromka, for everything. All right, so our second item is the capital improvements program. This is FiberNet. Those who are here for that, please come forward. Dr. Torregas has prepared the packet for us. Hi, how are you?
Good morning.
And for the record, we'll start by everybody introducing themselves. We can start over here. There's right there. Oh, can you push the button there, please? If it works, hopefully. There you go.
I'm Allison Dollar with OMB.
Mitsuko
Herrera, Ultra Montgomery DTS.
Joe Webster with DTS.
Gail Roper, CIO, DTS.
Okay. Prepared packet for us regarding FiberNet. Tell us.
If I can just briefly summarize, first of all, a spoiler alert, I'm recommending the FiberNet budget as presented by the executive. FiberNet continues to be a critical resource, not only for our departments and public safety agencies and so on, but also all the county agencies. FiberNet is to be seen as one technology amongst many others, radio systems, microwave radio systems, and others that the county continues to use to make sure that all our residents are connected to county services. There are three things that I'm suggesting that you focus on. One is that I continue to have grave concerns about the viability of funding FiberNet from our cable resources. And there's a question that I raised on page 4 of your packet, number 2, where I said, why don't we start looking at alternate sources, a more stable source, a more assured source? Because if we find out that next year, for example, we couldn't do it, we'd have to scurry to find $6 million quickly. The response was that we have some restricted funds that come from the cable franchises, but my response is that's no excuse not to start planning. So one of my recommendations is for the GEO committee to recommend that OMB and the executive look for additional different revenue sources for this absolutely mission-critical resource. Do you want me to stop here?
Yeah.
That's an important question that doesn't have to do with the actual request, but has to do with the long-term
Just in terms
viability.
of long-term planning. Any additional thoughts on that?
I disagree that we will in the future. Part of what I'd like to do going forward is to look at the viability of revenue streams for the network from a monetizing perspective. FiberNet is one of the county's greatest assets. I've been in organizations where the alternative was lease lines. I would probably say that the fiber network has already paid for itself in many ways because the alternative would be to have lease lines that are very expensive. The FiberNet is a national model. I am 9 days into my job, and
You pretty much solved everything.
for world peace, exactly. Exactly. But what I see in terms of our our strategies moving forward is to increase the quality of service of the network so that it could be competitive in terms of offering services to future entities. Also would say that I see some opportunity to provide services in the Ag Reserve and to address some of our challenges with equity in the county through the capabilities of the network. So I think that we're going to have to do a lot of work in terms of making certain that the network is reliable, continue to grow it. I have two very competent staff members who have done an incredible job. We see perhaps some opportunities to get some grant funding in and to continue to stay focused on the network as part of our economic development and even some instances of where I think we can align with small business initiatives. One of the things that I believe is greatly important here is to continue the strategy to retire some of the legacy aspects of the network and continue to grow the network as we move forward, and to make sure that with the funding is available to do that.
Wonderful. And so I think part of the recommendation is to have some kind of a preliminary draft of, possible plan, et cetera, by the fall. Is that something that we could expect?
Yes.
Councilman Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tragus, for the report and the recommendations. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
9 days, I'm sure
Yes.
you, as
Water hose.
Council President mentioned, I'm sure you've pulled and turned every stone and know where all the bodies are buried and have figured out, if not all the solutions, certainly all the problems that are ready to be solved.
I didn't know that.
My question is related specifically to the overarching 800-pound gorilla in the room, as we're talking about here, is this question of financial sustainability based on a cable fund that is not increasing, it's diminishing. I appreciate the commitment to look at other revenue sources. I wanted to raise one. I'm not an expert in this or frankly in anything, but I'm aware of the Schools and Libraries program at the federal level that provides funding to do this type of work for schools and libraries. It's known as the E-rate, from my understanding.
Yes.
Have we looked into that? My understanding is there's been an unwritten rule that we don't charge agencies to be able to have access to this, and so in order to make that work, you'd basically have to charge the school system to do that. We would apply or have them apply, and then we would figure out a way to reimburse them. I understand there's some complications to that, but have we looked at that? I mean, it seems like there's money on the table from the federal government.
So that is part of our plan, to look at the policy and specificity of where we can do that, where we can, what might be problematic. So that is part of our strategy going forward, to look at the E-rate options.
That's great. I'd love to include that in the update that we get here specifically. My understanding is that could be over $1 million, 1.2 million, give or take. That's real money, and I think it's one of the many examples that we talked about before in the short time that I've been part of this committee, about opportunities to change the status quo, about how we, these unwritten rules that we have amongst different departments and agencies, and collaborate better and access opportunities more when it comes to technology infrastructure, because I think many of our departments and agencies have the same needs, and we operate a little bit too much in silos. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
you for looking into that. Thanks.
First, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Tragus, for your, as always, your packets. This is, as Councilmember Friedson said, this is not an area that I am a great expert on either, but I do believe that you are, and I know that this team is. So I feel very comfortable that you are leading us in the right direction, and it's something that is needed. And of course, it's a diminishing return on their dollars. So we have to keep all of that in mind and have to figure out how to do this. But anyhow, I thank you, and I'm very comfortable with what you've submitted.
You do have a second
If you're comfortable with the discussion so far, I'm ready to recommend endorsement of the full budget as presented. There is a question that OMB and myself are working through to make sure the full council, by the time it gets presented, the full council understands how much money we actually spend in 2021. If you look at your Circle 1, it shows $6.1 million that comes from the cable fund. My understanding is we hope to spend more than $6 million in 2021. And it's simply the presentation of that fact, and it would come from the $7.5 million, which is unencumbered balance. In other words, we have this set aside, ready to be spent. So I feel much more comfortable if the GEO committee and the full council was aware of the actual dollar figure that we plan to spend in 2021. But I'm fully prepared to recommend your review.
All right. Any objection and the recommendation to approve? So we approve that item. Now, item number 3 is actually Ultra Montgomery, and so once again, Dr. Tregas has a number of recommendations. He does endorse the executive's recommendation of $680,000 for the Ultra Montgomery program in FY21, and does say that we should recommend its full funding to the council, but there are 2 items that
Yeah, and they're very brief again. One of them is that clearly Ultra Montgomery, under the vision of the prior county executive, was a key cornerstone of his policy. Ultra Montgomery, broadband, and so on. And I think it may be proper as the year progresses, the fiscal year progresses, to make sure that this particular initiative aligns with our current new county executive's vision for using broadband. And my number 1 is that clearly one of the mechanisms for Ultra Montgomery is economic development. And when I looked through both the submission and talked to people that should know, it wasn't clear that the expenditures in this item, Ultra Montgomery, were in any way aligned with economic development initiatives specifically. It may be that I don't have visibility, so I apologize for that, but I think it would strengthen DTS to make sure there are explicit linkages to our economic development initiatives. The council, spends quite a lot of money on economic development, and this particular project is targeted to economic development, but you won't gain the benefits unless you have that as a goal.
May I answer that?
Of course.
So one of the things that I've observed is that we, DTS, it really has to kind of step outside of its comfort zone and begin to present value on some of these initiatives that the county is investing in to align better with some of the department's economic development initiatives and for lack of a better term, kind of do some dog and pony shows in regard to what we're doing and what we want to do with Ultra Montgomery. So we're committed to doing that and having a better strategy for communication externally.
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of that point because I think it's a really important one. I'm new here, but I was following this from the sidelines, and I'm particularly interested in this. My understanding is this really was started in 2015 and 2016 by the prior county executive and his team, some of whom are still here, which I appreciate, but specifically as an economic development tool, as a way to connect us to Ashburn and to have a regional connectivity when it comes to technology to better recruit and to be even more competitive than we already are and take advantage of our natural assets with our research institutions to the technology hub in the region, which has been across the river, and to make sure that that river isn't an ocean in terms of our ability to access that. So I'm just curious,
Yes,
in
sure.
terms of the economic development piece of it, have we heard any feedback? Have businesses come here that we think came here as a result of this in the pipeline?
Talk about that.
Are we in talks with businesses, and are we using this as a tool to attract them? I mean, what's the? I mean, I know it's early on.
So I'll let the
This stuff
staff
takes time.
speak to that because there is a lot happening.
Yeah, thank you.
So one, we are working closely with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. We have the infrastructure is part of their promotional campaigns and highlighting that. We anticipate that the Ashburn connections, actually I probably should have brought a picture. If you drive along River Road, you will see construction that is happening there with one of our partners, Dark Fiber and Infrastructure. We anticipate that we will have a connection into FiberNet completed by say summer, early fall. There is in the works, hopefully on roughly the same timeline to get an on-ramp into the life sciences region, and we're also looking at a further connection into the Maryland regional networks, kind of all on that same summer-fall timeline. What we're hoping to do then is to have a kind of big kickoff. It's one of the things that we found in our various conversations with companies is if it's open and it's ready for business, they're much more excited about it than it's under construction. So we're looking to work on that, and we're looking to tie that with a couple other different business engagement initiatives that we have coming in the spring, in which we're looking to make both the federal agencies and other businesses. Part of our focus has been more on the retention of companies and looking to see in the market of folks who are growing. Broadband shakes out into a couple different tiers. The Ashburn connection is really a kind of very large 150 plus employer. So that's not, we're sort of one piece of that in terms of attracting those, but there's a lot of other things that go into the mix of attracting those types of folks. At the sort of smaller end of moving people who are sort of in the 1 and 2 person into office space, looking at ways that we're having conversations with developers, particularly in areas where you'll see the big shakeup that's happening, as you're well aware, in Bethesda. There's a lot of people moving into the sort of new trophy buildings, which means that leaves in some of the other areas buildings that really haven't really been refreshed since the 80s. So there's opportunities for broadband there, and then there's a lot of opportunities that we see in the Class C and Class B markets, particularly if they're not located near transit areas. So it gives, which is sort of what a lot of folks are looking for. So can you take space that might be interesting for entrepreneurs, where they're really looking for better connections than they're going to get in their home, and leveraging that. So what we're trying to do is to work with the county executive in targeting the plans. East County has really been our primary focus. The Perconti development out in Viva White Oak, it's moving slower than we anticipated, but we are fully baked into the design and ready to support that. I kind of just hoped by this point that it'd be a little bit further along, but
we also hope
but
Ditto.
we're continuing to move forward on that. And then the Wheaton area is something that we've sort of scratched the surface of it. The park and planning building, certainly FiberNet's going to be part of that. We're not quite certain how that shakes out, because most of that other development is residential, but that continues to be an area as well that we're looking at, and we're really trying to work with sort of, again, at the other end of this is on the entrepreneur. Like, how can we sort of, at the same time that we're helping the largest companies, and we're looking a little bit at the mid-size, what are we doing on the entrepreneur space, and are there some opportunities to support in between the incubator labs and the other things that we can be a bigger player. And the last thing I would mention is the collaboration with Montgomery College in the Pinckney Innovation Center and the Germantown campus. The Germantown area is actually one of the places that suffers the most from a lack of fiber connectivity. And once we can get the life sciences, other opportunities that we have in that area, that's probably another focus for us as well. But as the director said, having a better message so that it's clearer about how that's aligning with the various initiatives is something that we certainly can come back to you on.
And as you know, as we focus in on those expenditures, I do think it's important to know, I don't often like to talk too technical, but I think it's important to know that these networks are kind of FiberNet 1, 2, and 3. Each one becomes more advanced in terms of the technology that we use. So the funding will be spent to improve the quality of the network so that it is competitive with the private sector.
Appreciate that. I'm very bullish on this. I think it's a great opportunity for us and a really important way for us to demonstrate how we are building the infrastructure to create the economic opportunity that we need to really compete, particularly in technology. And I'm hopeful that we get some wins on the board, because I think, I appreciate, I was going to ask you about MCEDC. I'm glad that you are working with them to, really sell this to folks in the private sector to demonstrate how it could help their businesses and where they could locate in the county and what opportunities are available. But I think the best way we're going to be able to sell this is to have some wins, to be able to sell the wins and show not what we have and what it could do, but what it is doing for one or two or three or four businesses, to really have them be the leaders to show the way to others. So hopefully when we come back here next year, there will be some specifics of specific companies and specific places that FiberNet has, UltraNet has allowed. And just last piece, I really appreciate, I was going to ask about the ag reserve specifically and what the thoughts were there, and I appreciate the commitment on the equity piece and on the, you mentioned Germantown having a particular challenge here, and to make sure that the county has the infrastructure in all parts of the county, and also in the ag reserve, which struggles mightily in this area, and I think could be a really tremendous asset. So thank you for that, for mentioning that proactively. You beat me to it, which I appreciate and prefer. So thank you.
Thank you. I really believe that this has been an important conversation, because we are definitely embarking with a new administration and with different perspectives. I think it's also important to recognize that the council, as it also has been reconstituted, has put forth some really important priorities in terms of our agenda, and of course economic development is one of them. We did spend a lot of time having conversations about how to frame and how to strategically look at our assets, and how do we then leverage those assets, and how do we find where the gaps are. And one of the things that I've always been very reflective on is that we have had so many amazing things that we put in place, so many resources that we put in place. I remember the conversation with the East County, and it was this committee that felt very strongly that we needed to invest there. We shouldn't let that opportunity pass and not try to come back afterwards, but do it in a proactive fashion. And it wasn't necessarily what had been proposed, but so there's a lot that has happened. But I think this conversation is indicative of the fact that we have got to repackage, retool, and share the information, connect the dots. And I'm really excited that you said, DTS needs to also understand that it's a pivotal component of this economic development approach. We need to see ourselves, kind of imagine ourselves in a very different way. I feel like in the past it was kind of like, we're doing this and we're doing this, and the council would try to connect dots, but we're still kind of operating in a very kind of siloed way. So I do look forward to a much more integrated strategy regarding that. And then so obviously the FY20 estimated and the FY21 requested, they're very different.
I think it falls under the same category that I mentioned before on FiberNet. It's simply a matter of presentation, and I'm just alerting the committee that my belief, as reading the submission by the executive, is that we may end up spending more than $680,000, because we do have an unencumbered balance of $2.4 million, and it's just a matter of finding out exactly how much that is. It may be that the OMB presentation does not include that routinely, but I believe that that's something that would help the committee understand the impact of expenditures in any given fiscal year. I fully understand that the 680 is the new investment that's proposed by the executive. With that, I'm prepared to recommend approval.
All right. Without objection, we recommend approval.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I think that was the